Hello students. Now we will be discussing about the physical properties of amines. Something very important. Let's try to understand this. The very first physical property which we are going to talk about is nothing but the physical states and odor. Now the first point says lower aliphatic amines are colorless and fishy in odor. The next point, primary amines having 3 or more carbon atoms are liquid and higher ones are solids in nature. The third point says aniline and other aryl amines are colorless, but when coming in contact with air gets oxidized very easily and thereby turn a little bit brownish. Next, the fourth point, aryl amines are generally very toxic in nature. Let's move further. Now, let's talk about something that is solubility. We all know, are amines soluble? Let's talk with them. Now, primary, secondary and tertiary amines can form hydrogen bonds with water. That means they are soluble. Let's try to guess how the hydrogen bonds can be formed. We have amines over here. Yes. Next, we have a water molecule. Now, in amine, nitrogen is partially negative and hydrogen is partially positive. Similarly, in water, oxygen is partially negative and hydrogen is partially positive. Now, students, what would happen? Yes, there would be a force of attraction between the two opposite charges, and this force of attraction is nothing but a weak force of attraction called as hydrogen bond. What if we have one more molecule of water? Let's check it out. Again, you have the same scenario altogether. Oxygen partially negative, hydrogen's partially positive. So again, they would form a hydrogen bond in between them. And yes, if they are forming hydrogen bonds, that means they are soluble in water. The second point states that because of this, aliphatic amines generally having 6 carbon atoms are soluble in water. The third point, solubility decreases with the increasing molar mass. That is pretty obvious. The fourth point says amines are soluble in organic solvents like ether, benzene, alcohol, etc. Now, done with solubility, let's move further. Let's talk something about boiling point. Now, students, a very important concept over here. Firstly, amines are more polar than alkanes but less polar than alcohols. Why so? Because amines consist of nitrogen whereas alcohol consists of oxygen, and we all know who is more electronegative. It's oxygen. So yes, amines are less polar because of this reason. Now, the second point, primary and secondary amines are associated by intermolecular hydrogen bonds. Let's understand this term, right? Let's talk about an amine that is in primary amine. We have RNH2. So there are 2 molecules of RNH2. Again, nitrogen partially negative, hydrogen partially positive. Similarly, in the second molecule, you have negative and positive charges. What would happen? Attraction between 2 opposite charges. So if this happens, you would get a weak bond forming over here. That would be an hydrogen bond. Let's take one more molecule. Suppose if we take the third molecule, again there would be an hydrogen bond forming between the second and the third molecules, right? So, are they associated together? Yes, they are associated together. Same way, would secondary amines also form hydrogen bonds? Yes, they would also form hydrogen bonds. But remember, students, primary amines have 2 active hydrogens. Secondary amine have 1 active hydrogen. And what about tertiary? Tertiary don't have an active hydrogen. So first, let's talk about primary. We have 2 hydrogen bonds, or rather 2 active hydrogens In secondary, you have one active hydrogen. So that means who would be more associated? Obviously, primary amine would be more associated than secondary amine. And lastly, the order of boiling point for isomeric amines is nothing but primary greater than secondary greater than tertiary. A very important point or a concept over here. Now, we learnt about primary, secondary amines. Let's talk something about the tertiary amines. Then, tertiary amines could not form intermolecular hydrogen bonds. Why so? Because their active hydrogen is absent. There is no active hydrogen present over here, so there is no question of forming an hydrogen bond. The last point which we need to remember over here is that amines have higher boiling points than their corresponding alkanes, but lower boiling point than their corresponding alcohols or carboxylic acids. This was all for this module, students. Meet you in the next module. Till then, thank you. Bonds? Yes, they would also form hydrogen bonds.